On our introductory call to any client when we're onboarding them, we ask them what their mission is, what their vision is, what they want the space to function as. And then we dig deeper and how can we give people in the space the best experience? So what I always like to refer to is how the space engages all five senses.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Buildings 2.0. Today I'm speaking with Blima Ehrentreu, founder and CEO of the Designers Group. Blima, thanks for chatting with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
So I guess before starting and deep diving, what's top of mind for you? I think between running a company, all of the changing macroeconomic challenges, what's keeping you up?
I wouldn't say anything specific is keeping me up, but what I've been doing a lot of research on now is AI and leveraging that into our design process. So we've been researching this for a while now, and we always like to be at the forefront of whatever technology is out there so that we can provide for our clients the most innovative solutions for their spaces. So I've been doing a lot of research on that. And it's really, really interesting. ChatGPT just came out with their video, text to video. So that's really great, groundbreaking. And I believe that will completely change the way people are creating videos. And that ties into our virtual tours that we offer our clients. So it's all about staying on top of the trends and just knowing what's going on and making sure that we can implement whatever technology there is.
How do you think about that? So I know AI presents like such an infinite amount of new use cases, but in your day-to-day, how do you filter through the noise and what might add value to customers?
So what we're doing right now is really working with existing platforms that are out there and using those programs to help with our process. There isn't one program right now that has everything that we need. We've looked into creating some on our own, but we've really just been working at this point with existing programs that there are in order to simplify our processes and just make things easier for our team.
Yeah, I get excited because I think there's a few ways AI's gotten excited. In our case, on my team, we're often having to answer or help building owners answer, like, what exactly is in my building? And so we're combining scanning and 3D modeling and then asking, as a result of these, standardized information models, being able to extract data and then ask questions of that data is really exciting. In your case, your clients are bringing you on to then advise them on what they should do, right? So it's kind of like a generative use case. Is that kind of more or less how you see it, or do you see kind of take it to another level?
So there's so many different ways. Right now, what we've been leveraging is AI in our processes, but we've been looking into solutions for our clients from a sustainability standpoint. We are, like you said, you're reading information and you need to process that data. We want our clients, once the space is done, for them to be able to analyze how it's working and what best practices they can actually utilize to make sure that the space is sustainable, to make sure that the energy they're using is exactly what they need, nothing going to waste. I mean, there's so many examples of that. And we have been looking into that because we're not just about the spaces that we design. We want them to really function well. Long after we're gone, we want the space to really be maximized from all ends.
Dive in deeper on that because you've mentioned before that the importance of design isn't just about like how it looks or what selection of materials, but like how it actually functions. What are clients asking you today, or perhaps what are maybe a better way of phrasing is like what do clients not know they need, but they actually need to be mindful of in your designs?
A lot of people, when they think of design, they think of how it looks, like what you just said. And a lot of our clients are coming to us because they see our designs and they look beautiful. But we always tell them about the experience that a space can have and what's the story that the space is telling. On our introductory call to any client when we're onboarding them, we ask them what their mission is, what their vision is, what they want the space to function as. And then we dig deeper and how can we give people in the space the best experience? So what I always like to refer to is how the space engages all five senses. It's not just what it looks like. It's also what it smells like. We're working on a lot of senior living facilities or medical spaces, and some of those spaces come along with different smells. We want to make sure that when people walk in, it has a good smell, a smell that promotes well-being and wellness. And that's just one example. Then we talk about in the restaurant space where you want to make sure that the people coming can see the food and the acoustics function properly. Because when you're in a restaurant and you can't hear the person sitting across from you, it's not an enjoyable meal. So these are all different aspects that we look into when we're designing a space. So it's not just about the way it looks. It's also, again, back to that principle of how it functions. Because if the space functions well, you'll have people coming back, you'll have people enjoying it. And that's what you really want. You want the space to really encourage and allow people to have the best time there.
I'm curious, is there an example, like in your own experience, where whether like nostalgia from the past or even spaces you've been into recently where you thought like, wow, this is kind of an incredible blend as to how not just it looks, but how it smells, how it feels. I'm curious if you've encountered a space recently.
That's an interesting question. A specific space, I would say when I travel, it's very interesting because I believe that everyone's culture, their background, and the climate as well really influences the way they live. And I always say that it's so interesting to see that. And, I'm from Toronto. So I was just talking about this the other night, how anytime I complain that I'm cold, people always say to me, but you grew up in Toronto, you should be used to the cold weather. And I always explain that even though we grew up with a cold, we're much better equipped to handle it. So for example, our driveways are heated. We have garages. The parking lots are heated. There is parking everywhere that you go. While when living in New York, you sometimes have to park 3 blocks away. I mean, my building in New York, I have a parking spot, but it's outdoors. And it's just interesting to see the difference. And right now I'm actually in our Florida office and seeing how the weather really makes such a difference. So I would say in terms of that, I always look at spaces from that perspective. I did just walk into a home that very much reminded me of my grandmother's house. So a lot of plants. She had these drapes and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm in a time capsule here. But generally, every space is so unique. So even if there are specific aspects that remind me of something, not necessarily will it take me back to that place.
Super interesting. To take a step back, I want to hear from you. Starting a business is hard. And the decision to do that is, I can imagine the highs and the lows, the roller coasters. And sometimes I imagine in the beginning is probably pretty lonely in the beginning because you got to gather support and people to believe in your mission. What inspired you to found a designers group?
When I finished school, I actually started working at an architectural firm. I wanted to gain that technical know-how and understand how buildings work from an architectural standpoint and a structural view. And at that point, I was there for about a year or two, and another designer approached me about teaming up and taking on some projects together. And when she approached me, we never imagined what would turn into the designers group. And it's been an incredible journey. The first office is in Toronto and then moved to New York, opened an office there. And now we have one in Florida. We've been exploring opening in the West Coast as well. So it's just been an incredible, incredible journey. But like you said, there's definitely those highs and lows. The pandemic, that was something that we could never have expected. And just seeing my team and how everyone came together to really support each other and figure out ways to still be useful and to still contribute while everything was going on. That is really empowering for us as a team, seeing how we're always innovating, we're always looking for solutions. For example, over COVID, we came up with personalized backgrounds for businesses because we found that so many people were working from home, which is now very commonplace. So people have like backgrounds behind them. Well, I have a white wall, but at the time, you were able to see people's messy bedrooms or their kitchen counters, and it just didn't give that level of professionalism and branding that companies needed. So we designed offices for them virtually where they were able to work with our branding. And this was a service that we provided where we got to virtually design office spaces. So just always being creative, just always looking for new opportunities. We also work on a lot of senior living facilities where some of them have memory care units, which is for dementia patients. And we came up with semi-customizable wallpaper that imitated a familiar setting for the seniors where it looks like a street. So in the past, in order to do that, a client would have to hire an artist to custom it around where the doors are, where the windows are. And our semi-customizable product allowed them to have that product at a much lower rate and give that same experience. So as a creative team, we're always looking for different ways to fill the gaps, not just from the interior design perspective, but also from what we see where we can add value. So it's really fun and we love it.
That's really inspiring. I think building a business is hard enough. And I think then you throw a pandemic into it. I guess the amount of just both self-awareness as well as just like company awareness as to like, how can we be most helpful in this time of need? It's incredibly hard. So, I mean, kudos to you. I know I faced a similar challenge. I was only 2 years into the business. COVID hit. And of course, you're kind of on the rise and growing. And then all of a sudden this curveball is thrown at you. And you kind of have to really reconsider like your position, like what role in the kind of broader building environment you play. And so that's super cool. And that's a super cool story how you're kind of able to just see a particular need that was just like arose literally from one day to the next on the background. So are you guys still doing backgrounds or no?
People don't ask us as much, but they definitely are an option if someone needs them. If you have a pretty nice background, but we can always help you come up with something even better.
I might have to take you up on that. But I think I think what you're talking about is representative of just how just design in general can be much more than just kind of the physical space, but also I guess in this particular like even the virtual space, like how do we present ourselves? And
100%. When a space complements the branding of the company, it's so much more impactful. So it's not just about the space. We also help companies that we're working with their branding because we believe it's an experience. The website should speak to the physical space, which should speak to any print ads or any advertising, because whoever you are, it should be reflected everywhere. So the physical space is super important because that's typically where people are and where they can experience it most. But we always want everything to speak back to each other.
Exactly. Going really quick to your point earlier about, the process of partnering with someone, starting the business. Are there aspects to kind of running the day-to-day that you prefer more than others?
Definitely.
I'm curious if I have to imagine that there's folks coming at you all the time, super inspired and telling you like, hey, I want to start my own thing. What would you tell them, maybe knowing what you know now?
So I believe education is key, really important to learn the fundamentals. But then experience is also so important because with every project that we work on, we're still learning. There's always something new. And I always say that a mistake is not an issue if we learn from it, which takes me back to one of the first projects that we worked on. It was a residential home and we designed it. We were so excited. It was beautiful. And the sofa was scheduled to come and we go to the home very excited. We measured everything and it wouldn't fit through the front door. And we had calculated everything and we hadn't thought of how are we getting that sofa into the space. And that was such a learning lesson because what we had to do was return the sofa, choose another sofa that could be dismantled so that it could actually fit through the door. But this was a lesson that I now in any project, we're working on an event space now in Brooklyn. The ceilings are 18 feet high and there's partitions in the space and it's in the sub-cellar of the building. So when talking about these partitions, one of the things that I discussed with the lead designer was, how are we getting these partitions into the space? They're going to have to be brought in before the window. There is actually no windows, but before the elevator goes in, because the partitions are not going to fit in the elevator. So it's just about learning from the mistakes. And obviously we took responsibility when it came to the sofa. We paid the restocking fee and we took responsibility for that mistake because our clients are trusting us and they're paying us for that trust and that advice. And we are the experts. So if we do make a mistake, which we're human, it happens, we just have to make sure to ensure that we can get it right.
That's such a powerful story. I'm going through a similar exercise where I'm finding I'm having to play a bit of a historian as to like, here are all the mistakes I made in like year 1, 2, and 3. As the team grows, I'm hoping like, hey, here's a few things that I did that we hopefully don't have to do again. I'm curious, have you found more effective ways of telling stories like the one you just told? Like that's pretty powerful. Like if I heard that, I'm like, oh geez, now I got to think about, you're right, not only just how it looks like in the space, but like A to Z. How do we even get it? How do we buy it? How do we deliver it? How do we install it? Are there things that you found for your own team are more effective as you play historian?
I would say that experience really is the best teacher, and our team is super collaborative. So everyone is really working together from first years to senior level. Everyone really works together, and that's what I love about it. Our team is super diverse, and I touched on it earlier briefly, how I do believe that everyone's backgrounds and everyone's culture and religion and country or climate, that all impacts the way that they're experiencing things. And because of this, our team, when they come together and they collaborate, we have a much better end product. So it's so important to listen to everyone's input. And for us, it's not about how long you've been with the firm, how much experience you have. We really love to hear from everyone, and everyone has that opportunity to voice their opinion, to come forward with ideas, and that keeps us very innovative.
And I mean, kudos to you. You take a look at even your team makeup, and a lot of folks kind of pay lip service to building a diverse team, empowering women on the team, but you've figured out a way to like operationalize this. For firms looking to take it a step further and take seriously how you build a diverse team, are there any factors or any kind of operational principles you believe that is just much more practical to actually empower women and more diverse team members on the in these firms?
We're a creative team, so we look for talent. And when people ask me, how did you assemble such a diverse team? I say it's really about their talent. We're not specifically looking to make our team diverse. We are a super inclusive work environment, but we're really looking for people who have the skills and the talent so that we can give our clients the most amazing design experience ever. And I believe it's because of that principle. We're not looking, when people are trying to assemble a diverse team and they're only looking for a specific type of person to make their team diverse, sometimes that ends up being counterproductive. Not always, but we found that by strictly concentrating on talent, it was a natural progression that our team is just so unique and everyone brings such a unique perspective to the table.
What are some of those traits? So I remember back in my architecture school days, there was such a heavy emphasis on like the visualization. And to your point about expanding design into all senses, not just like eyeballs, I feel that I was kind of in many ways done a disservice when you get into the kind of the real world, when you realize like buildings are much more complex than how they look like on a 3D render, right? And so that was a kind of a lesson learned going into the working environment. Now, when you combine that plus what's happening in AI, what are some of those skills that you find are just super important in folks getting into the design industry right now?
Really understanding who your client is. For example, we work on a lot of senior living facilities, like I mentioned. And what we do is before the new year, during the holiday season, the designers that work on different homes get to visit and really see how the residents are experiencing the spaces that they've designed. And I believe that that's so impactful, actually seeing the space, seeing how people are living there, how people are working there, how people are using it. I always say in any of the spaces that we're designing, it's not just about the client or the patient or the resident. It's also how the staff could function there, because you want them to be able to optimize what their job is to make sure that they're providing for the people within the space. When we're looking at multifamily spaces, residential projects, we want to make sure that everyone can be a part of whatever amenities they are. So obviously there are accessible codes. We make sure to follow those, but also even thinking outside of the box, making sure that everyone will feel included, that there's a game room for people who would like games, but also a lounge space so people can work, and using technology so that really everyone can feel part of the space, and keeping it flexible and adaptable so that it can be worked into different uses as well. That's something that we've really been focused on now in the office space, is keeping the offices flexible and adaptable, because so many people are working from home and there's this hybrid work culture where people come in some days of the week and not other days. So we want to make sure that the work environment is inspiring for employees and they want to come in, and that there's something that they're actually gaining from coming into the office. So we want it to function when there's many people there and when there's less people, and giving people that privacy that they need if they do need that for certain types of meetings, but also creating that collaborative environment so people can really learn from each other and produce their best work. So there's just so many different industries that we're in, and that's what we love about it, because we're able to take different aspects from different industry types and bring them into others. For example, we were working on a string of urgent cares over COVID where we took a hospitality perspective. We wanted people to walk in when they're getting medical service and feel good, like when they're getting a massage or a facial. Why is that a luxurious experience? And when you're getting stitches, it's an anxiety-ridden experience. So just looking at different industries, again, in a multifamily space or a hotel, there's someone sitting at a front desk greeting you. So why should you not have that in a skilled nursing facility? There is that admission, there is that person sitting there at the front. So let's make it feel like a hotel. Let's give it a hospitality vibe. So it's just been interesting. It's been really fun putting ourselves in the end user's head and figuring out how we can make the space really optimal and work for every person who may come through.
On that space, are there common themes that you've seen, like say today versus 10 or even a space that was designed 20, 30 years ago? What are the ingredients that make up like a space of today, that just, whether it's the use of technology, the way we approach colors, particular materials, layouts, do you see any common themes today in these spaces? And perhaps you've mentioned a few, from like hospitality to senior health centers. Are there threads?
There's definitely a lot of overlap in the different industries. People are appreciating a more blended type of living experience where there's retail in a mixed use building, for example, and people want that one-stop shop kind of idea. They have everything at their fingertips. I would say it's really about understanding what people are looking for in a space. One example that comes to mind, we're 20 years ago, people were not doing online orders. So the apartment buildings 20 years ago do not have mail rooms for the amount of online orders that people are doing today. Even having a fridge in a mailroom was unheard of a few years ago just because it wasn't necessary. And now with everyone ordering online, it's a very important part of the planning. You want to make sure that there won't be boxes strewn all over as people walk into a building. You want to make sure if people are getting groceries delivered that they won't spoil. So there definitely are changes to how people are living. I would say in the office space, we're seeing much more of a focus on health and wellness. It's not crazy to have a gym in your office building. That's almost standard already. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, people wanted to go to a gym. They weren't looking for that in the office. So it's just interesting to see how there is that blend of people wanting more options in whatever space that they're in. And we want to give that to them. We want to make sure that their experience will have everything that they want or need in it.
That's super interesting. Maybe to run the thought experiment, you're in New York, and I imagine if you're walking around downtown, midtown, there's oftentimes you'd look up and see very tall office buildings and not very many people in them. And I think this kind of much larger tailwind of us asking with changing paradigms in the way we work, we are kind of evolving to a kind of more virtual culture, but there's still this sense of desire to like rethinking the work environment as a thing. Just a thought experiment. Like, what do you imagine in a few years from now are just better uses of office space? You mentioned that we're already starting to think about some of the table stake stuff, like, having wellness centers like near workplaces to perhaps drive people to the office. But what might be better uses as to how we think about these kind of office relics in many ways, where you have like more like trading room style layouts where just a bunch of desks, and that was how we worked. Do you have a sense as to what it might begin to evolve into with these office floor plates?
Technology is changing so fast with virtual reality. And I believe that will impact the future of office, because so many people will be working with headsets on, like the virtual goggle headsets. And I think that will minimize the footprint that offices need, especially because of people's hybrid work culture as well. When we're talking about technology, I'm even thinking of conference rooms 10 years ago. The amount of virtual meetings that people had were much, much less than they are now. Now, when we're designing conference rooms, we make sure that it will look good on a Zoom call. So that's something to think about when designing. So I believe that aspect of work will impact the workplace design, because so many things are on camera now. So everyone's desk, or not even a desk, but everyone's work area will be outfitted for that virtual experience as well. So when people are not in the office, they still feel like they're in the office. And with the introduction of more in the virtual space, I believe people will be able to feel like they're working together while they're really apart. So that's still some ways to go, but I could see that happening for sure in a few years, where there's that virtual collaboration in a way that people feel like they're really in the same space when they're not.
I can't help but to think that as it gets more common to work from home, assuming, of course, that you have, the proper setup in the right space, I have to imagine that folks are going to at least consider that as a really strong option. And then, of course, you have kind of the opposite extreme where folks are, saying, hey, for some kinds of work, at least if you're in knowledge, in the kind of knowledge industry, right? Like having spaces where we can join together, be in person is a must-have. I'm just fascinated as like what layouts and like quite literally offices will look like. And to your point, we'll probably need less of it though. So less just space for like individual desks and whatnot, and more a reconsideration as like why we have to go into the office in the first place. I know every kind of company is slightly different and has different policies, but in your particular case, you're running a design firm. And so how do you kind of think about this, like keeping folks together while also kind of creating a remote culture? I have to imagine is a kind of pressure you're facing.
For sure. And that was something that we implemented over COVID, where we recognized that people wanted that remote option.
Yeah.
And that was something that we really didn't consider before, because I believe when we collaborate and we work together, especially in the design space where you're touching and feeling materials, when it's all about the experience, so there's something about being together and there's something about collaborating together. But we've implemented different processes and different virtual office options where people can feel like they're working together so that we can really attract and retain talent, because that's what people want. And we want our work environment to cater to what our team wants. So I always say, happens to be last week, I was on a panel and it was in person. And someone asked this question, and my answer was that this experience of us all being on a panel together in person, you can't compare it to a panel over Zoom. It's a completely different experience. So I do believe that as time is moving along and people are getting more and more used to this virtual way of meeting people, that we are becoming okay with it and it is becoming the norm. But if you want my honest opinion, there's nothing like being in person, especially in a work environment where you get to overhear different conversations about design and how people are coming up with solutions, and getting to join meetings that, because you're there, you hear about. There's something that you can't replace with a virtual work environment, but you can get pretty close. And that's what we're working on. And we have an incredible team, and not everyone has met each other in real life. And it's been great. People have been really able to work well together and collaborate. And we want to make sure that the level of service that we're providing for our clients is up to par when our team is together or when they're just together virtually. So I believe we have taken steps to do that, and we've been able to accomplish it.
For me, whiteboarding is one of the things that I think I still have yet to figure out, like a good alternative virtually. I know there's tools out there and
Miro board, yeah.
Miro.
People pronounce it differently, but yeah.
It's not the same. It's not the same. And sometimes I've noticed that if there's like a particular effort that you just like, we have to kind of bring to life, like there's no replacement for just, rounding up a group of, your leaders or your folks kind of being in a room and just like hashing it out like on a whiteboard and just, getting straight to the point. I often find that these virtual meetings and calls almost kind of segment our focus into like 30-minute or 60-minute sessions, and then like you have to kind of context switch to something else. And really, really fascinating. I guess in that context, have you found either tech tools that were just more effective in this context of like both in person and remote? I know in our case we use a different kind of tech stack, but is there a tool that stands out as like, this is just, we cannot live without this anymore?
We're a Google-based platform, so we use Google Meet all day. We're using Google Chats, Drive, and then we're working with other CRM platforms and, just to organize our processes. And I mean, it depends on where we are in the design process, but we're definitely working with a lot of different programs. But, I'm still a notebook person. Like my notebook is right here with my pen. Like I feel you can't compare. So I'm still old school like that. But there is something to say about us being able to get on a call like this instead of having to drive to a meeting, especially now with traffic. I mean, you can kill half your day sitting in traffic. So we do have the ability to be able to get a lot more done and to be in more places at once because of the technology that's out there now. So there's definitely a lot of positives to this virtual work environment that so many of us are a part of. But there's something to be said about human interaction.
That I guess seems like we're organically moving into a space where we are maybe having just more options, more like diversity of options. Because to your point, I'd argue that most of my meetings these days are virtual. And so by definition, I'm just having more opportunity to meet various folks either on the team on a day-to-day basis or on with customers or clients that, kind of a strictly in person, most of the time, like to your point about commutes, like you could waste a few hours just getting to a particular meeting, let alone taking another one. And so to your point, I wonder, there's this kind of like quantity and quality balance that I think you're referring to. Is like nothing will absolutely beat in-person engagements, but I guess we're finding ourselves in some sort of spectrum between that, right? More engagements versus better engagements. But yeah, you're spot on. You're spot on. I guess one final question is, as your team grows, do you feel that your kind of original thesis of starting the business, has it evolved in any meaningful way? I guess, knowing what you know now, what's exciting for you in the next, 2 years as your team grows? Like, what's kind of the most exciting next step for the firm?
So many exciting things. We're working on a lot of different opportunities now that are super exciting. And it all boils down to who we are as a firm. We believe that designing with purpose, that's our motto, designing with purpose, creating a better world. And everything that we do really speaks to that. And that's one of the reasons that we have so many charitable initiatives through the firm. We're using our firm as a platform to do better. We have the TDG Furniture Exchange, which is a platform to help people who have furniture they no longer need find someone who could use that. And I myself just used it in Florida. I got a new place and I had a few extra stools that I had ordered. Basically, I'd ordered them and they needed to be replaced, and the company just sent a replacement and said I do not need to give the other ones back. And I was able to find someone through the TDG Furniture Exchange within 4 hours who just moved into a new home and needed stools. So it's so rewarding to be able to have this kind of impact, both from a career standpoint, where all the spaces that we're working on really make people's lives better, as well as helping them through our firm. And there's so much that we want to do in that space and continue to do. And I'm really excited about it. And I can definitely share more about these different opportunities that we're exploring as they become more developed. But right now, you can check out our website to see some of the latest projects and initiatives that we're working on. And together with my team, we're really excited about 2024 and beyond, because there's just so much that we're working on and so many ways that we're able to have an impact. And it's really rewarding and fulfilling for us. And we really appreciate all our clients and friends and everyone who takes a chance on us and gives us their spaces to design.
Super fascinating. Blima, thank you so much. I think between your perspective on company building and everything from AI to the challenges of a pandemic, where we're going, some of the ingredients in our spaces and how they're changing, just super fascinating. So I can't wait for part two. For folks that might want to follow you, is what's a good platform? LinkedIn or just directly to your website?
LinkedIn's great. Our website is great. We're on almost every social platform, I would say. So awesome. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, yeah. But our website has links to all of them. So that's probably the easiest space to start.
Incredible. Blima, super excited for the year ahead for you. I'm excited to do a part two.
Same here. This was so great. And thank you for your time.